After suffering through all 7 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, I must admit, my standard for what I'd consider a good show dropped pretty significantly. The next thing I watched after that was always going to be a ray of sunshine in my life. I probably could have watched a shit show and thought to myself after that it was a masterpiece. However, the final season of Ozark is what I happened to watch afterwards. As I mentioned before, I don't know if the Book of Boba Fett broke my spirit down so much to the point where I was just happy to watch anything else, but this last season of Ozark was, in my opinion, one of the best seasons of television I've watched in a long time. Not the best, just the best in a long time. And again, I've watched some shit shows recently, so, you know. A final season being one of the strongest in a show is almost unheard of these days, which is sad because a lot of shows start strong and then let themselves down towards the end. You don't have to look much further than Game of Thrones, which had what is in my opinion the most disappointing final season of all time. Now when I say all time, I mean literally all of time. Past, future and present. Nothing has or will ever let me down more than that season. The fucking cheek... Anyway, most shows unfortunately tend to outstay their welcome. A bit like when you bump into someone you used to know 10 years ago, and you give it the usual, I haven't seen you in ages, what have you been up to? And then 20 minutes later and they're still telling you exactly what the fuck they've been up to. The initial chat was nice and seeing them was great and all, but you don't need this life story, you don't care about their kids, you don't care about their wife, you don't care about their life. It's just like how we rarely need a prequel. We accept where things are and continue like such. We don't need hours of context after the fact, we're quite happy to continue on as things stand. To put it briefly without spoiling anything, Ozark follows Marty and Wendy Bird after they find themselves owing large amounts of money to a Mexican drug cartel. I'm not going to tell you why, and I'm not going to tell you what happens, you should just watch it for yourself because I guarantee this show will have you hooked from the first episode. This series has a proper pilot episode. You know, like a show is meant to. The whole point of a pilot episode is to hook the viewer. Pilot episodes used to be testers for studios to see the audience's reaction. If it generated enough interest and attention, then the show would continue to run, and if a pilot episode failed, the show was likely to be cancelled. These days we see pilot seasons more than episodes. We get a complete season all at once, and the success of that season ultimately determines if another one will follow. This allows shows to take a much slower approach. Sometimes this pays off, but it can result in shows taking too long to truly grip the viewer. Ozark will grip you from the first episode. The first episode sets everything up with such brilliant writing and tension building. The pacing is excellent and the cinematography is beautiful. I feel like cinematography tends to take a back seat in most shows in comparison to movies, or maybe it's just the shows I've seen lately, but if that is the trend, Ozark breaks it. Jason Bateman himself actually directed the first 2 episodes of Ozark and many more afterwards, which is beyond impressive to me. I mean, I'm a fan of Jason Bateman, I can't really explain why, but I really love his presence in the films he is in, and seeing how good of a job he could do behind the camera as well as on screen just shows that he's got such a good grasp of how to make great TV. The show is perfectly cast. Not only Jason Bateman, but the entire cast is incredible. In saying that, however, Julia Garner as Ruth Langmore, I would say, stole the show. She plays a character who comes from nothing, born into a family of criminals, yet is one of the smartest characters in the show. The first and last seasons are the clear standouts in this show for me, but by no means does that mean the other seasons are bad. For me, shows lose some steam when they try and incorporate too many plots and characters, and the driving force of the central plot isn't as clear. When there's so much noise that there can be episodes that don't advance the story whatsoever, Game of Thrones would be an exception to this rule, prior to season 8, and some other shows manage it fine, but for the most part, when movies or shows get too crowded without a strong enough structure, I don't feel like it works a lot of the time. I think this is why I love the final season of Ozark so much. To be more specific, part 2 of the final season, because they released the final season in 2 parts. Part 2 is what I'm referring to here as the final season in this review. They made us wait a few months before releasing part 2, so it just feels like the final season to me. I mentioned earlier, it's very rare to find a show that's final season is as strong as the first. I may be suffering from recency bias here, but that's just how I feel right now. I personally found every episode of the final season of Ozark gripping. It's been a while since I felt like that watching a show. Now, the show isn't perfect. As I mentioned before, I felt like it did lose some steam in the middle sections, and maybe this is different when you're able to binge it from start to finish, but I watched it having to wait for seasons to come out, and I feel like that's a very different watching experience. The biggest disappointment, however, was the ending. I personally feel like they missed the landing here. I can't go into too much without spoiling anything, so I'm not going to, but the final 10 minutes of this show just let me down a bit, which is a huge shame for me because the final episode itself was excellent. Even right up to the final 10 or so minutes, there's a conversation on a boat that had my eyes glued to the screen and my heart rate raised. Those who have seen the show will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's basically all I can say without going into spoiler territory. It's been a few days since I finished the show, so I'm less wounded about the ending. I was going to get to work on this video directly after I finished watching, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. It would have been a more negative review and the show doesn't deserve that. Unlike Game of Thrones, for example, the ending wasn't awful. It's not like it abandoned all its respect for the characters it just spent 4 seasons building. The ending fit into the story, and I guess it kind of made sense the more I think about it. It was just that the final season built up all this tension, and the payoff we got felt lackluster. Again, now that I've had time to sit on it, it's not awful. I guess I was just expecting something a little bit better. At the end of the day, I'm not a director, and maybe I was just expecting an ending that wouldn't have made sense. Or what I wanted to happen feels correct in theory, but wouldn't have paid off nearly as well when executed. I'm not going to pretend I could have done a better job, it's just that when those credits rolled, I took a deep breath and muttered, "Fuck's sake," under my breath. I was just praying the ending held up with the rest of the season. I'm so used to being let down by shows that during the entire season, I kept praying that they didn't bottle this one. I just feel like they kind of did. Again, I don't think it's bad in the sense that it completely kills the rewatchability of the show, like Game of Thrones. I just wanted better. All in all though, guys, I highly recommend you watch Ozark. It's very consistent, it has its slow points for sure, but I was never bored. I'm sure that now people can binge it rather than wait for each season as well. It'll be a better watch overall. This is the first video I've made on this channel, and I'm looking forward to making more. These videos will get better over time. Let me just get into the swing of things a little bit. I don't know why I'm talking as if this is going to get views. First videos on channels never do, and I probably won't get some views for a long time, but maybe it'll just be funny to look back on if this channel ever gets successful. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Damn. Really hope I can come up with a better outro than that in the future. That is generic as fuck.